Hi everybody, welcome in to Saturday Sampler. Marilyn here with Cotton and Chocolate, and we're in June, halfway through. So we are doing blocks Dowager and Minuet, which are on page 9 and 10 this month, and you will see them in the quilt. This is Dowager right down here, and Minuet up here. You can see it behind me in the quilt, and you will find them in your color chart. When I turn it here, this is Dowager up here and Minuet, and of course always take these out and follow them when you're piecing your quilt and laying them out so that you know that you're putting it together right and you have the colors correct. So first we're going to be doing the cutting, and so this will be the information chart for block 8, which is on page 9 for Dowager, and actually there's no changes this time for that one from the page 9, right here it is, information that we have for cutting. So follow along. This is fabric 1. You're going to cut 4 3 1/8 inch squares, and you're going to cut them once on the diagonal for flying geese. Now, this is different than using the Deb Tucker method because these are 3-color flying geese, so that we're making them traditionally this time. I know. Okay, and then you're going to cut 4 2.5-inch squares. Okay, so then on this piece, fabric 3, you're going to cut 2 3 1/4-inch squares. So I'll cut a 3 1/4-inch piece down here, and then cut 2 3 1/4-inch squares. Cut them once on the diagonal for a square and a square, and then you'll cut 1 3 1/8 inch strip, and then cut 2 3 1/8 inch squares once on the diagonal for flying geese. Fabric 5, you're going to cut 2 3 1/8 inch squares. So I will just cut a 3 1/8 and a 3 1/8 off here and square them up once on the diagonal for flying geese, and then I'll cut a 4.5-inch strip off the rest, and then cut 4 1.5-inch pieces from that, and then I'll cut it down to 3.5 inches, and then cut 4 1.5-inch rectangles out of the rest. Okay, fabric 8, you have a one long strip here, so don't cut a 3 1/8 inch strip, because if you look further you have 3.5 inch and 2.5 inch. So I'll just cut one 3 3/8 inch piece off the end and cut a 3 3/8 inch square, and then I'll cut from the rest a 3.5-inch strip, and then cut 4 1.5-inch rectangles, and then the rest I'll cut down to 2.5 inches, and then cut 1.5-inch rectangles off the rest. And then finally from the rest you have fabric 11. Oh, and there's our kitty. We were wondering where he was. I'll just fold it in half, and then cut 2 5.5-inch squares, and then cut it twice on the diagonal for flying geese. Okay, so we're going to put that aside and keep going here, but that's for our Dowager block. And I know, have a seat, Bingy. We're filming. We told you we were filming. Okay, so next is Minuet, and there are changes with this. So this is your information block, because we have half square triangles and traditional flying geese using our Deb Tucker ruler for this, or flying geese ruler. So I'm going to read to you off of here. So this is fabric 1. You're going to cut 2, this is a 6 by 6, so you're going to cut 2 2.5 by 6 inch pieces, and from each piece cut 2 2.5-inch squares for a total of 4 2.5-inch squares. Leave those be. And then scoot it in here. We have a 7 by 11 piece. You're going to cut 3 3 1/4 by 7-inch pieces, and from each piece cut 2 3 1/4-inch squares for a total of 6 3 1/4-inch squares. Okay. Fabric 4, 7 by 7. You're going to cross cut 2 3 1/4-inch pieces, and then you're going to cut them into 3 1/4-inch squares for 4 3 1/4-inch squares for flying geese. From fabric 5, our green, you have a 7 by 7-inch piece. you're going to cut 2 3¼ inch strips out of the 7x7, cut those into 3¼ inch squares for 4 3¼ inch squares for flying geese. Oh, no, not flying geese, half square triangles, sorry. Fabric 6, 6x6, you're going to cut it into a 6 by 5¾ inch piece, and then you're going to cut it down to 5. So basically 1 5¾ inch square. Sounds confusing. Don't get confused. 1 5¾ inch square, cut it down to for flying geese. Okay. Fabric 8, our pretty pink, 7x13. You're going to cross cut 1 5¾ by 7 and square it up to a 5¾ inch square. Cross cut 2 3¼ by 7, and then you're going to square this up to 4 3¼ inch squares for half square triangles. Keep going. We have 2 more. Fabric 10, it's a 7x7. You're going to cut 2 3¼ inch strips, and then cut these down to 3¼ inch squares for 4 3¼ inch squares for flying geese. And lastly, 4x7, you're going to cut 1 3¼ by 7, so cut it down to 3¼ And from this, you're going to cut 2 3¼ inch squares for half square triangles. Okay, that's all your cutting. Okay, and then I will see you back for piecing. See you then.